So this is a popular meme that pops up from time to time on my timeline. Um, and I've never been able to find any actual source for the phrase, but that doesn't matter. I'd still like to break it down for you, at least my theories on its meaning. The phrase in itself is incredibly vague, and a lot of people have their own interpretation of what the different parts mean. I mean, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. It's not that I think that the phrase is particularly wrong or inaccurate, it's just too vague and leaving too much to the interpretation of the person reading it, depending on their situation in life and how they're going to feel about what strong men are, what weak men are, and what good times are, and what hard times are. So first, what is strong? Well, most of the time we think of physical strength. And what is physical strength? Well, mostly comes down to your ability to lift heavy things and or endure physical pain or physical activity for long periods of time. But then there's also emotional strength. Now, this comes from having control over your emotional states, the good and the bad emotions that you have. You know, not abandoning all your responsibilities in seek of joy and excitement and pleasure, but also not allowing yourself to be controlled by your fear and your anger. Emotional strength is often difficult to get as it requires a great deal of internal honesty and internal struggle and questions about how and why you think and feel and act the way you are and what's causing it. And then there's moral strengths. These are closely tied to emotional strengths, but still, it's more or less kind of like your willingness to do the right thing, even if it does create hardship for yourself in the process. Now, morals are very subjective, depending upon your upbringing and your experiences in the world. And then there's intellectual strength. Now, this is akin to like critical thinking. Your ability to, it's not just that you have gained a bunch of knowledge. It's actually, your ability to interpret that knowledge, understand it. Where does it come from? What does it mean in the bigger picture of everything else you know and everything else that exists? And understanding that different theories, different opinions, different concepts all exist and are intertwined in one way or the other and feed off of each other. So then, what's weak? Well, more or less, it's pretty much the opposite of everything I just said. For physical weakness, it's not able to lift heavy things, or that you can't endure any level of physical pain for any real length of time. And that's not saying that, like, you can't tolerate being stabbed or anything like that, but it's like running, and when you hit the wall, physical strength is to be able to push yourself past that point. And then emotional weakness, it's letting your emotions get the better of you. It's running and hiding from your emotions, denying your emotions, like denying that you're sad or denying that you're scared, allowing fear and anger to overcome you in response to these emotions, to hide and shield you from your own emotions. It's not letting yourself cry when you're sad, and it's acting irrationally when you're scared or afraid. And then moral weakness, once again, it's very subjective, depending a lot on your personal beliefs, but there are some kind of universal morals, like being honest, and so not lying or cheating or stealing, being greedy, these sorts of things. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a time and place where a person needs to be somewhat deceptive in order to protect themselves for their own self-preservation, that sometimes you need to mislead or you need to be able to misdirect in order, for your own betterment, and it's a balancing act. And then intellectual weakness comes from just blindly believing things without ever giving the opposing opinions any sort of consideration, just dismissing any possible counter argument out of hand as being firmly entrenched in your own knowledge and believing that your knowledge is the only knowledge worth knowing and everything else is just wrong. Now, so then there's good times and there's bad times. Now, what are good times and bad times? Once again, these are incredibly subjective depending upon what you need from life. What's good for you might be really bad for somebody else, and vice versa. But that doesn't say that just because it's good for you and bad for someone else, that it is in fact bad. You get promoted over somebody else, that's good for you, bad for them, but it's still a good thing. Your business going under because someone else opened up a business and competed with you and managed to take your customers, bad for you, good for them, but still, it's a good thing in a sense. Now, there are some universal goods and bads as well that aren't dependent upon individual people, but it still works in the same way, like free speech. It's good for everybody, right? Even if what one person says is bad for you, just their ability to speak it is where the good is. Same with democracy. The vote might not always go the way you want it to, but the vote is the good thing. Freedom of expression, just because someone doesn't express themselves the same way you do, the ability to express ourselves openly and freely is a good thing, even though sometimes it might feel like it's a bad thing. And then, freedom of religion, someone finding peace and solace in the teachings of Jesus is no better or worse than someone who finds peace and solace in the teachings of the Buddha. Now, what about hard times? What are hard times? Well, that's the thing about hard times. All times are hard times. Life's hard. Life is not going to be easy no matter what your station in life is. It doesn't matter. You're going to have your struggles. You're going to have your adversities that you have to overcome. Like, there's always that meme that comes around in various different forms about the first world problems. And yeah, you get the little bit of perspective that, your YouTube video taking too long to buffer is not as bad as living in North Korea. But since you don't live in North Korea, your problems are still kind of your problems. And even people who live within the same country as you in the first world, there's people that struggle to get ends meet, while there's billionaires whose, on the surface, seems like their biggest struggle is figuring out what color they want their next Lambo to be. But the problem with that is that it's us being envious of them, being blind to what their actual struggles are, and not seeing that these people, although living very different lives than us, and on the surface living lives that we very much want to live, still have their struggles. I think of a billionaire, and I can only imagine how isolating that must be, to constantly have to worry about if people are being nice to you because they want to be nice to you and generally care about you, or if they're just trying to get something from you, trying to use you to get access to your wealth for whatever reason. It's this kind of the same thing that I think about with celebrities. Sure, they have the fame and fortune and everybody wants to know them, but their complete lack of privacy in their life. It's a struggle. It's a different struggle than anything that I've had to deal with. But it's still a struggle. And we can't let our envy blind us to their problems. So yes, hard times, also known as life, does create strong people. And strong people create good times for everybody. At least they try to. But humans are imperfect beings, and we'll never create the perfect system that gives everyone what they want all the time. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think you would want getting what you want all the time. Life is most enjoyable when there are obstacles to overcome, when there's a challenge to meet. I think of video games, because I love my video games. I think of Minecraft. And there's the survival mode and there's the creative mode. In the creative mode, you just get access to unlimited everything and you can just build whatever you want. And it's great to play around in there, but it's also fun to take up the struggle and the challenges that come in this survival mode of having to go out into this virtual world and gather my resources and build my little shelter so that the enemies don't come and kill me. So the meme tries to depict that we're stuck in this cycle of weak and strong creating good and hard times, but it's not necessarily a circle. It's an ebb and flow. It's back and forth. It's a struggle on us. And when you're dealing with adversity and hard times, the real strength comes from looking within and seeing what you yourself can do to better your life at that time, and working to create good times for you, not trying to find some sort of scapegoat to blame all your problems on. Because blaming people for your problems isn't going to make your life any better. It might kind of make you feel better that it's not your fault, and it might very well not be your fault, but it is still your responsibility at the end of the day to create your own good times. So, that's just my theory on this little meme. I'd like to know yours, and I look forward to reading them in the comments below. Until next time, bye. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to reading your comments below. Please like and share, and please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. The link is in the description below.